Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome back to today's Tolkien Times. I'm the Man of the West, also from the Prancing Pony podcast. Let's wrap up week 47 with Second Age Saturday. Now, last week we watched as Aldarion, once again and without consideration for anyone, left Erendis and their 4-year-old daughter Ancalame. Today we'll see, surprise, surprise, that Aldarion doesn't come back when he said he would. When the second year after Aldarion's sailing came in, by the king's wish, Erendis ordered the house in Armenelos to be arrayed and made ready, but she herself made no preparation for return. To the king she sent answer, saying, "I will come if you command me, Atar Aranya, but have I a duty now to hasten? Will it not be time enough when his sail is seen in the east?" And to herself she said, "Will the king have me wait upon the quays like a sailor's lass? Would that I were, but I am so no longer. I have played that part to the full." But that year passed, and no sail was seen, and the next year came and waned to autumn. Then Erendis grew hard and silent. She ordered that the house in Armenelos be shut, and she went never more than a few hours' journey from her house in Emerie. Such love as she had was all given to her daughter, and she clung to her, and would not have Ancalame leave her side, not even to visit Nuneth and her kin in the Westlands. All Ancalame's teaching was from her mother, and she learned well to write and to read, and to speak the elven tongue with Erendis, after the manner in which high men of Numenor used it. For in the Westlands it was a daily speech in such houses as Beregar's, and Erendis seldom used the Numenorian tongue, which Aldarion loved the better. Much Ancalame also learned of Numenor and the ancient days in such books and scrolls as were in the house, which she could understand. And lore of other kinds, of the people and the land, were heard at times from the women of the household, though of this Erendis knew nothing. But the women were chary of their speech to the child, fearing their mistress, and there was little enough of laughter for Ancalame in the White House in Emerie. It was hushed and without music, as if one had died there not long since. For in Numenor, in those days, it was the part of men to play upon instruments, and the music that Ancalame heard in childhood was the singing of women at work, out of doors, and away from the hearing of the White Lady of Emerie. But now Ancalame was 7 years old, and as often as she could get leave, she would go out of the house and on to the wide downs where she could run free. And at times she would go with a shepherdess, tending the sheep and eating under the sky. One day, in the summer of that year, a young boy, but older than herself, came to the house on an errand from one of the distant farms. And Ancalame came upon him munching bread and drinking milk in the farm courtyard at the rear of the house. He looked at her without deference and went on drinking. Then he set down his mug. "Stare if you must, Great Eyes," he said. "You're a pretty girl, but too thin. Will you eat?" He took a loaf out of his bag. "Be off, Eval," cried an old woman coming from the dairy door, "and use your long legs, or you'll forget the message I gave you for your mother before you get home." "No need for a watchdog where you are, Mother Zamin," cried the boy, and with a bark and a shout he leapt over the gate and went off at a run down the hill. Zamin was an old countrywoman, free-tongued, and not easily daunted, even by the White Lady. "What noisy thing was that?" said Ancalame. "A boy," said Zamin, "if you know what that is. But how should you? They're breakers and eaters mostly. That one is ever eating, but not to no purpose. A fine lad his father will find when he comes back, but if that is not soon, he'll scarce know him. I might say that of others." "Has the boy then a father too?" asked Ancalame. "To be sure," said Zamin. "Ulbar, one of the shepherds of the great lord away south, the sheep lord we call him, a kinsman of the king." "Then why is the boy's father not at home?" "Why, Harinki," said Zamin, "because he heard of those venturers, and took up with them, and went away with your father, the Lord Aldarion, but the Valar know whither or why." That evening Ancalame said suddenly to her mother, "Is my father also called the Lord Aldarion?" "He was," said Erendis. "But why do you ask?" Her voice was quiet and cool, but she wondered and was troubled, for no word concerning Aldarion had passed between them before. Ancalame did not answer the question. "When will he come back?" she said. "Do not ask me," said Erendis. I do not know. Never, perhaps. But do not trouble yourself, for you have a mother, and she will not run away while you love her. And Calame did not speak of her father again. Wow, that is just some heavy stuff, especially at the end. A few notes on today's reading. Erendis sends an answer to the king saying, look, I'll come if you command me. And she refers to him as Atar Aranya. Now that translates to royal father, as Atar is Quenya for father. It's cognate with Sindarin Adar. And we see Atar in Iluvatar, father of all, as well as in Atanatari, the fathers of men. Now, Aranya is Quenya for royal, and it derives from Aran, meaning king. We get some Adonaic names, but there are no details anywhere for them. Ebal, his father Ulbar, and the servant woman Zamin. Then there's the cute name that Zamin addresses Calame with, Herinke. It means little lady. Heri, H-E-R-I, means lady, and though we don't see it often, the male version is Heru, lord, and we see that in Onderher, stone lord, Kirjaher, ship lord. Now that Heru is not related to Herogrim, the name of King Theoden's sword, because that word is Old English in origin, so just similar, visually similar in terms of sound, but it's not the same meaning. Now that Inke suffix, that's simply a diminutive, so little lady. A little English help, though, rather than trying to figure out Sindarin words here or Quenya words, there was a line that read, but the women were chary of their speech to the child, fearing their mistress. Well, chary just means cautious or careful, and it's synonymous with wary, so you could just replace it with that in your mind. As to the story itself, it either needs a week's answer or none, as Sam might say. I mean, Aldarion doesn't come back when he said he would, but it didn't really matter. Long before he didn't come back. In last week's reading, Erendis' love was already wounded to the quick, and we see the bitterness fill in the emptiness that's left by his absence. So Erendis goes back to her home in Emerie and homeschools Calame in the Elven tongue, rarely using Adonaic, as that was Aldarion's preferred language. And while she provided for her daughter, she certainly didn't make this a happy place for her, or even a place where she could be happy. Little enough of laughter, hushed and without music. The whole place is like someone just died. This is not a joyful or happy place. But then, as a 7-year-old little girl, she meets a boy. She doesn't even know what he is. Talk about socially isolated. When she inquires a bit more, Zamin doesn't have much good to say. Breakers and eaters mostly. Not that that's false here, certainly in their limited experience. Before she mentions Calame's father. Now that prompts a conversation with her mom, who responds so harshly about it that Calame never speaks of him again. And sadly, the last line of Erendis' dialogue with her 7-year-old daughter is deeply troubling. You have a mother, and she will not run away while you love her. Okay, your dad abandoned you, which is true, but I won't so long as you love me. Little wonder that Calame turns out the way she does, but that's a spoiler, I suppose. In the meantime, there's just a lot of heavy stuff, and I'm looking forward. I don't know, maybe that's the wrong word. I'm interested. I'm anticipating the time on the PPP when we will dive in depth into this text and really talk through these difficult issues. For now, though, it does it for this week's Second Age Saturday and for week 47. Thank you for joining me, and be sure to come back next week as Aldarion comes home to a rather cool welcome. Please visit patreon.com/Tolkien Times to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, join the Content Council, get a bonus episode each week, and more. And please, if you're watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe. Follow or subscribe in your podcast apps, and follow @Tolkien Times on social media. Finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.